So for the second part of Class 10, we now have our side subassembly drawing. The second one is in the clamps. We're going to build the upper and lower frame. This video will follow the steps that are outlined on page 24 of your book. So we've got our front and back lower rail, we've got the front and back upper rail, and our 4 drawer runners. Now usually we set up for these to be perfectly flush. We would just say we're going to cut the length of this drawer runner to be exactly the shoulder to shoulder length of the side rails. But since we have this already glued up, we're going to take advantage of that. Let's go ahead and plug these in. All right, this is the front right. So this guy plugs in right here. Very good. And there we go. And so when we set up to cut these now, we'll do the thing that we've done from the beginning of this class. We're going to start out by doing a trim cut on the end, and then we'll flip them all over. We'll set up with a piece of scrap and do a test cut. When we get the exact fit on this, and we can see that that's going to deliver exactly that spacing, then we'll cut the 4 of them. Now you can see the reason for that. Take this back out, because the distance between those is going to determine exactly how those tenons fit in there. Okay? Very good. Let's get started. All right, so we'll come over to the saw. We're going to do our trim cuts. Flip them over so that the side we just cut is ready to go up against the stop. And we'll do our test piece. Do a nominal measurement of what that stop should be. Make a test cut. Let's check and see what we've got here. Oh, we're close, just about a 30-second more. We'll go back to the saw. We'll make just a very small adjustment. Tap it over a little bit. And let's see what that looks like. Press it in tight, and oh, perfect fit. So we've got no side-to-side play. It's perfect. We're ready to cut the rest of them. Let's go back to the saw. The stop is in place. We're going to take these cuts, let the saw cut. And there's no need to rush through that cut. That's a real-time cut there. Now for the rest of them, this is running at twice speed. So what I like to think of is let the saw do the cutting. Don't rush it, because you can actually push the blade around. Now just a reminder, you want to always make sure you're up against that stop and that you're clear up against the fence and that there's no debris in your way there. So there are our drawer runners. They are ready, and now we're going to head over to the bench and plot out our joinery. All right, so now with our drawer runners cut to length, we're going to connect the front and back lower rails to the drawer runners, the front and back upper rails to the drawer runners. There's several ways that we could do that. We could actually use a mortise and tenon, and just as an example, here's from a previous project. We have the front rail, we have the drawer runner, a small mortise and tenon connecting those two. Okay. There's also a machine called the domino. It cuts a mortise in both the front rail and the drawer runner. You can buy various sizes from very small, and they even go larger than this, or you can make your own custom. And what we're going to use is called a plate joiner, and this is a biscuit for a plate joiner. This is a number 20. They come in 0s, 10s, and 20s. and there is actually some custom sizes that go smaller than that. The tool we're going to use to cut those, commonly called a plate joiner, also called a biscuit joiner. It cuts a little half moon, the shape of that, half of that biscuit. Okay, well, let's do our layout now. That biscuit is going to lay right there, kind of in the middle of that 3-inch span. You can see how it'll span both of those. Why don't we put it right in the middle? So it's a 3-inch rail. I'm going to put us a mark at 1.5. And we'll just carry that same mark on every corner. Let's grab the plate joiner. Plate joiner uses the bottom surface as a registration, or it can use the fence as a registration. Now the cutter blade is just a small saw blade. I think we're going to use the surface of the bench as our registration. We'll just make sure that we have the correct face down. And we'll take this fence off. We've got our marks there. Excellent. Okay. We'll go ahead and cut the lower rail joints as well. And we're going to start that by doing our layout. So we're going to measure 1.5 inches over and give ourselves a mark. We want to be able to see that. We've got the registration face down to the bench. Now the key to successful plate joining is making sure that plate joiner is flat, making sure there's no debris under your piece. Okay, we're ready to spread glue and clamp these guys up. We've got water for cleanup. We have our clamping cauls in place. Clamps are set. We're ready to start spreading glue. We're going to lay a small bead of glue right at the entrance. To these mortises. I'm not going to worry about spreading this. The biscuit will spread the glue just fine. Get plenty of glue on these biscuits. The glue is what activates these to expand. When they're made, they're actually rolled through a press to compress them. Now we'll spread in the end grain of these drawer runners. Set this exactly flush there. All right. Bring this guy in. I'd like these to be flush on the outside. Try to get these clamps right down the middle. These joints are closed. Let's do a little cleanup here. As I get this cleaned up, I'm noticing a little bit of gappage at the bottom. So I'm going to raise up the piece a little bit in the clamp. That moves the clamping pressure lower. Now let's flip this thing over. And we can clean up this side. That all looks pretty good. I'm going to get this on these inside corners. And we'll set this aside to dry. Now we're going to glue up the upper frame. It's pretty much what we went through on the lower frame. We spread glue in the mortises. We'll coat the biscuits well. Make sure they're saturated. And place those in the rails. And we get the drawer runners now. We're going to go ahead and coat the end grain on this. You know, end grain is not a great joint, but it does add to the strength a little bit. Try to plug the right one where it goes, if I can figure that out. I don't worry too much about squeeze out at this stage because this is all pretty easy to clean up. I want to make sure I get the most out of that biscuit joint. We're not depending on this biscuit joint for tremendous strength, but we do want it to stay together. Our main strength comes from the mortises and tenons of the main piece. And what I'm looking for here is that joint close well. And I might adjust the clamping pressure, and what I mean by that is if it's a little bit gapped at the bottom, I might raise that piece up a little bit. If it's gapped at the top, I might drop the piece down so the clamping pressure changes. You just want to look at that corner, and that's where you can see that. Let's clean up both sides. Okay, we're just about done. Set this thing aside to dry, and it'll be ready to cut to length.